Hello, this is Jeff from Baron Leathercraft, and today I am going to be sharing with you the techniques that I use to create full patterns in Affinity Designer 2, as well as LightBurn, and today I will be using the AlgoLaser Delta 22 watt laser and the AlgoLaser DIY Kit 10 watt laser. I'd like to also point out that I don't have any affiliation with these companies. I did do a review for the AlgoLaser Delta as well as the Algo DIY kit. Other than that, I have no relationship with these companies. Now, the main purpose of this video is not to make a belt pouch, even though that is what we made in this video. It's really just to share my technique on how to make patterns in general with these tools. That way, you can broaden your capabilities with your leather crafting if you've been using other people's patterns, or if you have ideas in your head that you're not able to implement because you're not familiar with how to make patterns. So I'm going to share with you exactly what I did. One of the most important aspects of this video is how to create stitching holes between the front and the gusset and the back. And the reason I say that is because the technique in using these tools is different for whether you're doing like a wallet that's two-dimensional or doing a gusset that is three-dimensional. You might have seen some of my other videos on using Affinity Designer 2 or Illustrator to make stitching holes. This video takes it a step further and shares some of the more complex aspects of creating stitching holes when you're dealing with gussets. All right, I want you to be familiar with the pieces. That way, you know, when we make this thing, you'll know what I'm talking about. So here is the front piece, and the front piece has two rivets in it that hold this loop, which holds the antler. This is the gusset, and this is the back piece, which is actually all one piece, including the piece that folds over the front. There's the hole that we'll be making. This is also, you have a reference as we're making it. And that one piece of leather material goes through the front so the antler can fit through it. And this is the belt loop piece. This is the piece that you'll see us make that will actually go through the belt. So I want you to be familiar with these pieces so you don't get disoriented while we're working on the pattern. Of course, if anyone has any questions, I'm here to help. I like sharing this kind of information. My goal in this video is to teach you how to make patterns. And once you know how to make patterns, that's it. That's the beginning of the journey of making just about anything you want. Please like this video. I would truly appreciate it. And let's do it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I am in Affinity Designer 2, and I'm going to go ahead and go to File. I'm going to hit New. I personally like to use a large workspace, so we're going to go ahead and start by using, in the architectural section, Arc D, which is 36 inches by 24 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and change the DPI to 96, so it plays well with LightBurn. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. All right, now we are confronted with the front page. I have my grid set up. And the first thing I want to do, since we're making a belt pouch, is to create the shapes. Now, there's three main shapes for this. There's going to be the front of the belt pouch. There's going to be the back, which also it'll fold over the front to close it. And there's going to be the gusset. So there's three main pieces. There's other pieces that we're going to create, but let's just deal with the three main pieces right now. I am going to personally create a kind of unique belt pouch because just the standard U shape, let's have some fun with it. So I want to go with a polygon. So I'm going to create a polygon by clicking the polygon tool in the polygon shape area, or I should say just the shape area. And I'm going to hold shift down because shift will keep it symmetrical. If I took the shift off, then I could play with it in any way I want. But I want it to be symmetrical in every way. And I'm also going to make sure that this is going to be, if you notice down here in the transform section, I'm going to change the measurements. I'm going to make it 6.5 5 inches wide, and I'm going to make it 5.5 inches high. All right, now I want to go ahead and center this because I'm going to be able to manipulate it a lot easier if it's in the center of the board. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to the align center area, and I'm going to align center. And then since all the boxes aren't showing on the way I have it set up, I'm going to go ahead and click this, and I'm going to have it center now into the center. Let's zoom up in it a little bit. Okay, let's go back a little. And I'm going to, you see how it's grayed out right here? I want to take the fill up in the fill section. I want to shut that off. So now it's transparent. And if you notice, when I clicked off of it, you can't see it anymore. That's because we don't have a stroke at all on it. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. And then I'm going to go over here to the stroke section, which is this little area right over here. And if you notice, there's different menus, and I'm going to click on the stroke menu. And I'm going to click into the width of the stroke. And I'm going to, even though I'm set up in inches right now, I'm going to hit 0.29 millimeters, mm. So now, if I click off of it, you see that it exists. Now you noticed, even though I went ahead and typed 0.29 millimeters in the width section, it recognized it, even though my format right now is set up to inches, and it just converted it to 0.011 inches. So you can type that if you want. Now looking at this, I don't like the point, so I'm going to go ahead and change the curvature of the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the corner tool, and I'm going to click on the object. Now you see there's these nodes on each side. I want to change every one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and run my cursor over all of them. I'm going to bring my mouse to a point where I'm close to one of the nodes. And you see the shape changed. I'll go back, see, no there. Half crescent moon, there it is, there it's not, there it is, there it's not. I want it to reveal itself. Then I'm going to click the mouse button, and I'm going to drag down. And it's going to create circles that give the example or expression of what the curve is going to look like. So that looks pretty good. Let's go a little more. And then let go. There you go. So now we have a curved line. It's a lot more, to me, it's a lot nicer. And when we go to stitch something like this, it's going to be definitely better. Now, this is going to be the front of the belt pouch, and I want to turn it upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I'm going to make sure that I'm using my move tool, because it brings up different tools. Every time you click on something different, different tools are going to come up here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit this one right here, which is flip vertical. At this point, I am going to remove the corners on the top. This is now going to be the top of the front of the purse, the part that's connected to the gusset. I'm going to go ahead and click on the corner tool again. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to just highlight the top two corners. And I'm going to grab onto these circles and then just pull them up. Bam. See, now it's gone. That's the shape of the body, the front part of the belt pouch. I'm going to go ahead again and click on my move tool. And if you notice, once again, I have this centered in the board. So what I want to do is create some guides. So I'm going to go ahead and come all the way to the side of this ruler, click down, and grab a guide. You see how it became green once it hit the center? Watch the guide. Bam. So now it's in the very center of the artboard and of the object. I'm going to do the same thing with the horizontal. I'm going to bring it down. Bam. You see how it turned red? It's really helpful. You know that you've nailed the spot by that happening. All right, at this point, I have my object centered, and I have the shape that I want it to be in. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the stitching line. It's going to be the guide for where I want to stitch things. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click on the shape. I'm going to go to this round gear looking thing, which is the contour tool, and click on it. Now the shape is already highlighted. I'm going to hit Control J, which is basically duplicating it and leaving it at the same spot. So now I have two shapes, and one of them I'm going to make our stitching line. And since it's the one selected, I'm going to come up here to radius, and I'm going to hit -4 millimeters. I'm going to hit enter. Now, if you see, it created an inner line, an offset, if you so like to call it. And with that is going to be the stitching line. Now, this brings me and us to the key feature of one of the things that is important about creating stitching lines inside Affinity Designer, or for any other program that I've ran into at this point where I've created stitching lines. I'm going to come here and go to the strokes. Now I'm going to show you something that we're going to undo, because I want to show you why something doesn't work and why you have to manipulate this stitch line. If I was making something that's flat, like a wallet, I could use this system that I'm about to show you. But if you're going to make something that has a gusset that separates the front and the back, you want to make sure that everything is lined up. And I'm going to show you why this won't work if you do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and take that offset line. I'm going to click the dashed line in the stroke area. I'm going to change the width of it to 1.4 millimeters, which comes out to 55 inches. I'm also going to change the cap to round, which it already is, and the join to round, which it already is. Then I'm going to come down here to the first of the increments of the stitching line. This box represents how far each stitch is to each other, and how close, and other ways of manipulating it by creating several different patterns. Since we're creating a stitching pattern, we just want one pattern, and that's going to only deal with the first two boxes here. So the first one, I'm going to put a 0, and the second one, I'm going to put a 4. Bam. Oh, I must have hit 9 there. So let's go back, because that's why those look really weird. So let's go ahead and hit 0 there. All right, so now if you see, it's now a 0 instead of a 9, and we got a 4 there. And this created our stitching line. Now, if you noticed, everything is balanced and symmetrical. You have a hole right there in that corner, a hole right there in the corner, and you got these two are balanced here perfectly. And I'm going to bring down a guideline and show you. Look on each side of the drag line of the guideline. You'll see all these holes line up. And that's great. And the reason why it's doing that is because right here on the stroke area, I have this balance button hit. Now, when you hit that balance button, it'll adjust all the holes to fit so they are perfectly aligned with each other. It does this by not really following the rules of how far you want the holes to be. It adjusts them so subtly that you could still use this as a stitching line for like a wallet and stuff like that. Even though these holes are not exactly the same distance apart from each other, it's invisible and you can't tell. That's why if you're going to make something flat, this is perfect. This is all you need to use to do this. But if you notice, when I take the stitching line and I shut off the balance, let me move in a little more and show you. I'm going to flicker it back and forth. Bam, bam, bam. This is on, off, on, off. Now that it's off, you see how this dot right here is not centered in the center. So, and either is this one. It's not right in the corner, which is going to make your stitching look horrible. Now, if I bring down a guideline and put it across one of these holes, you'll notice that they don't land in the same spot. See how this right here, the guide is on the bottom of the hole? And on this side, it's more in the middle. So the stitching is no longer lined up. If you're going to make a gusset for something, you know, the holes always have to line up with each other. Now, if I create a gusset and I use this stitching line like this, because the stitching line on the gusset is a straight line, when I go ahead and use the balance button, it's going to balance it based on that straight line instead of the curves that are going on here. So it's not going to work. The gusset stitching holes are not going to line up with the pattern that's on the actual other pieces of the leather. Are you following me? If I use the balance on the object and I use the balance on the gusset, the holes are not going to be in the exact same spot because the program is compensating for the shape of the object you're applying the stitching holes to. So because we're using a gusset and we're not making some flat object, we can't use this balancing button. So let's go ahead and shut it off. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and alter this whole stitching line now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off the dots and go ahead and make it a straight line again. I'm going to leave it for what it is, which is 1.4 millimeters thick, because that's the size of the stitching holes I want it to be. The size of the width of your stitching line is going to be the size of the width of your stitching holes. So you can make that whatever you want it to be. All right, now we have to do a little cutting at this point. Why? Two reasons mainly, unless I can think of another one as I'm saying this. We want to get rid of this line up here. We don't need the stitching line to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the knife tool, come to this corner and click on it. Then the knife goes away for whatever reason, so I have to click on it again. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this corner. So now there's two cuts, but if you notice, it's still not separated. It still sees it as one object. It's like, why is this? Well, in Affinity Designer 2, they want you to go up to Layer, and then go to Geometry, and then go to Divide. Now that I've clicked Divide, I'm going to click off of the shape, and then I'm going to click back on the shape. And now you see that just the top is selected. And I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to hit delete. So now we have one line that's going from one side of the object to the other. I want to be able to make symmetrical stitching holes. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to work with one side of this, not both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my knife tool again. And I want to get this exactly in the center. So I'm going to zoom up on the very bottom. I'm going to find this cross section and I'm going to go ahead and click on it. So I just cut it right there. So it's cut right in the center. Let me zoom back. Come in a little bit more so everyone can see. So once again, it still sees it as one shape. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Layer. I'm going to go to Geometry. I'm going to go to Divide. See, now they're two separate shapes. I'm not going to delete this one yet, but what I am going to do is I'm going to change it back to 0.29 millimeters. Hit enter. And now it's going to be a guide, because what I am going to do is I'm going to take this side and I'm going to make it into stitching holes. And I'm going to go back to the stroke section, click on the dotted line. You see it's already at 1.4 millimeters thick. All right, now we have half of our stitching line. I'm going to click off of it. If you notice, it starts right here and it ends right in the center where we went ahead and clicked on it. Once again, because we didn't use the balance, all these dots are evenly spaced. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate it. Now the duplicated object is what's selected. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to hit Flip Horizontal. So there it is. There's the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift and I'm going to grab the object. I'm going to bring it over down to our guideline right there. See how it's snapped in right there? Bam. And it showed a green and red lines to show you that I'm balanced and even with everything. So I'm going to go ahead and let go. There we have two stitching lines. I'm going to go ahead and click off of my guideline so we don't see that. There we go. There's our symmetrical stitching lines. Now remember, down here, there's two dots because the first dot overlapped the second dot. This is something to remember because we're going to go ahead and delete that. You can delete it here. Once we separate these dots, right now they're all one object, or you could do it in LightBurn. It's up to you, We'll see which choice we make once we get to that spot. So there's our stitching line. This piece is done. So let's go ahead and get rid of these guidelines that Affinity Designer 2 sometimes just manifests on its own. I just want to keep the ones that are centered. I don't even need them anymore, but it's not a bad thing to know where the center is. So I'm going to go ahead and create the back, which also flips over to the front of the belt pouch. So I'm going to go ahead and click on just this piece right here. And I'm going to hit Control J. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift so it stays balanced with the piece I'm pulling away from. And there you go. That is the bottom of the back. But of course, this needs to be one long piece for the gusset and for the size of the gusset and for the front that'll overlap it. So now I'm going to go ahead and create two of these. So I'm going to click on it again, hit Control J, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip it vertically. There we go. Now we have two of them. I'm going to come in closer. Now the one that's on top, the new one, the one that's facing up, I want to go ahead and hold Shift down, because when you hold Shift down, you probably know this already, but just for those who don't. If I don't hold Shift down, it just wobbles all around the place as I pull it up. I'm going to undo that. If I hold Shift down, now it'll stay straight. It'll want to pull away, but if you let go of Shift and then hit it again, it'll come back to its spot. So there, I'm bringing, you see how that red line clicked in there? Because I snapped to the object. Watch. It pulled away, pulled it back, pulled away, pulled it back, snapped. There, now these are two lined up perfectly. Now, there's part of the front shape. This is important now. Let me share what I'm about to tell you. This is going to be the front. This is going to be the back. But right now, if I was to fold this forward, this piece right here, there's no room for the gusset. So you got to keep in mind how thick you want your gusset to be. So I'm going to make a gusset that's 2 inches thick. So I'm going to create a box with the rectangle tool. Follow the guides because it makes it simple. I see I don't have snap to guides on, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to go to the snap section of the guides. And I'm going to go to snap to grid. This will just be helpful. I'm going to be shutting things on and off in the snap section. But if you notice now with my cursor, as I go to the grid, it shows up with that line basically saying, yes, you're smack on it. So there we go. I'm going to start there. I'm going to pull down to 2 inches. If you see the width and height little box, I'm at 2 inches now. And now I'm going to go ahead. It doesn't matter how far we bring it this way for right now. I'm going to adjust that. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this box down to meet that same line right there where, so everything works together. There it goes. It turned red again. Let's zoom in just to make sure. Oh, okay. First of all, if you notice it's in dots, because what it's doing is it's mimicking the actual last line that I used to make dots. So since it happened like this, if that ever happens to you, just go back into the stroke section and turn it off. Switch it back to stroke. And I want to make sure that it's 0.29 millimeters. Whoops. I see. Let me tell you what just happened there. Because I just hit 0.29, it assumed I wanted to just do inches. But since now I'll fix that by hitting 0.29 millimeters and hit enter. There, it's back to what I need it to be. And if you also notice, that line is not perfectly in here. And now I want to make sure it is. So what I normally do at this section is, if you see up here these 3 boxes, this shows you how you could view things. Now these lines right now have strokes on them. I want to take off the stroke and just see the wireframe. So I'm going to click on this one. It's called Wireframe View Mode. Bam. Now, if you notice, this is where I want this blue line to be, but it's not. So I'm going to hit Shift, pull it down, and there. Now it's a line. You see how that red line came up? I'm going to do it again. Bam. So now everything's aligned. I'm going to go ahead and back up. Okay, so now the gusset is lined up with the bottom piece, but I need the top to line up with the gusset as well. So that way that creates space for the gusset. So I'm going to click on the top piece, I'm going to hold shift down, and I'm going to pull up until it slams right there. You see the red line again once? Now it's lined up. Let's go ahead and double check it. Yep, everything is set up. So there you go. There's the gust shape for the gusset, but I want to pull these sides in so they're also balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the gusset example piece, pull it in. Bam, see how it snaps and the other pieces turned yellow? That's the beauty of Affinity Designer. It tells you when things are lined up. It's really nice. I'm going to do the same thing for this other piece. Bam. So now it's in there perfectly. Can't hurt to check. See? Everything's perfectly lined up there. So there's that piece, except it's not done, of course. Now, if you were to bring this into LightBurn and told it to cut it, it's going to cut your piece in half because it's going to see this as a line too. So we need to join all three of these pieces. And the way to do that is to go here in your toolbar and hit Shape Builder. First, highlight these pieces. There you go. Now they're all selected. Now I'm going to go ahead and click inside the top piece, pull down, and you see how each of them are getting like a grid line in them. It's just expressing that it has chosen them. Now they're all chosen. Now I'm going to go up here to the action and hit plus, and it's going to group them together. Watch. Smack. So now we have one piece, and this is going to represent the actual piece. This is the back of your object, of your belt pouch. This is the fold area where the gusset, and this is the top. This is the piece that's going to fold over this piece. So there you go. As far as the second piece is now completed as far as the shape is concerned. But now you can see both pieces. And we're going to get it off of wireframe. I'm going to go ahead and shut off wireframe. So now you could see the dots and the actual strokes. Now you're going to need to have stitching holes in the back of this because the gusset is going to go ahead and stitch to this, and the gusset's going to go ahead and stitch to this, which means you need to have symmetrical stitching holes on each piece. They all have to line up. So let's go to the Move Selection tool and go ahead and highlight this piece. Now I highlighted all three of them, the both stitching lines and the actual object for the front. Let's go ahead and group them for now just to make things simpler. I'm going to go ahead and hit group. And just so we don't manipulate this piece, just as a safety precaution, we're going to go ahead and duplicate it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt and Shift and drag it over to this body piece. Now it should already be lined up because we used the shift before, but I'm not going to perfectly line it up. I'm just going to leave it like that. So I'm going to show you how to line it up better. But now, because we duplicated it, this piece is safe. So if we happen to ruin or distort this one on this side, it doesn't matter. We have the main section still well in place. So I want to line these up. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the front piece, and I'm also going to hold shift down and click on the back piece. Now, when you line things up, you want to pick a designated object for the other object to line up. And in Affinity Design, what you do is you hold Alt down, and then you click on the piece that you want the other piece to align to, and it'll highlight it like that. So now when I come up here and hit Align Center, it's going to move the front piece to the body. Bam. Now we're going to zoom in to make sure all the holes and pieces, they're both lined up well. And you could go ahead and hit wireframe if you want to double check, but it's on. It's always good to double check because when you're dealing with stitching holes, you're dealing with exacts. You want them to really fit well. Okay, so now if you see, I'm going to shut off wireframe. There's your stitching holes now placed in the proper spot of the back of this belt pouch. But of course you have this line here. You don't want it to be there because it'll cut your piece in half once you bring it to LightBurn. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this piece, and I'm going to go ahead and hit ungroup. And now I'm going to unhighlight it just to make sure I didn't have the stitching holes attached to it. And I'm going to hit delete. Bam. So there you go. Now you have the stitching holes on the back piece that totally match up with your front piece. Now we got to create the gusset. And the gusset has to match these holes. Like I said, that's why you don't use the balance button in the stroke for creating the stitching holes, because it'll throw everything off. Now the gusset, as you know, needs to have the same amount of stitching holes. Now, how do we figure out how many holes there is? Well, there's two ways to do it, perhaps more, but there's two ways that I know of. One is a simpler way, and it's a easier approach. It's a lazy approach, and it works. So what I'm going to do, once again, to keep this piece safe, is I'm going to duplicate it. And by doing that, I'm going to go ahead and click on the object, hit Alt and then Shift, and then bring it up. So now we have a duplicate. Now, the reason I do this is because Affinity Design will go ahead and count the objects for you. But right now, since these stitching holes, let me go ahead and ungroup it. These stitching holes are not considered separate individual holes yet. They're considered one line. So I want to go ahead and see, if you notice, if I go ahead and highlight this whole thing, down here it says there's 3 objects selected. That counted it for me. 3 objects, the actual body and the 2 stitching lines. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the stitching lines, hold Shift down to grab the other one, and I'm going to go up to Layer, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Expand Stroke. And now I'm going to go ahead once again to Layer and go to Geometry, and then I'm going to hit Divide. Now notice, before I hit Divide, this area right here, the Layers section, is going to create many more layers, and those layers are all going to be the stitching holes. So here I am. I'm going to click on it. Divide. Bam. Now, if you notice over here, there's lots of stitching holes. So I'm going to unclick here and click back. Now, if you see now, let's zoom in on it. All these holes are now separate holes. So when I go to highlight everything, it's also going to grab the body piece. Now you could go down here now and see that there's 68 holes. 60 holes. And you know, that's counting also this body piece. And if you remember that separate hole that's down here. So now we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. This is the time to do it, because we don't want anything to mess us up. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight here. If you notice, it also shows it in the layers panel. I'm going to hit delete. Now, if you notice right here, when we went ahead and expanded the objects, it went ahead and smushed those two together. So I'm going to use this as a reference point to where to create a new hole. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these holes, and I'm going to hit Alt down and drag away from it. So there, it made a separate hole. Now I'm going to go ahead and place this right there. You see how it's centered? It's also centered with the entire object and with that hole that was there. So now we have a hole there, but we also have those half moon slivers underneath it that we want to get rid of, because once we go to laser cut this, that's going to cause some wackiness. So the hole that's selected now is the one that I'm showing right here in the layers panel. So I'm going to shut that off. There, now you can see behind it. So now I'm going to go ahead and select those 2 pieces, and I'm going to delete them, leaving an empty space. Now you want to come back to the layers panel, and you want to find that hole. That's not it, that's the other guideline. If you click on something and it doesn't show up, it means you clicked on the wrong thing. And there it is. So when I click on that now, bam, now it exists again. So now we have a perfect hole, and we got rid of the extra hole. So once again, let's highlight this. It shows now 57 objects. If you notice too, when I went ahead and selected this, it didn't select this body piece. Now if I hold shift and click on it, it'll select it, and now you see it shows 58 pieces. But I want to get rid of that piece, so I can click on it again. So there we are, 57 objects. There are 57 holes in this piece, and so that means we're going to need 57 holes for the gusset. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the gusset with 57 holes. One thing we want to do now, which it's up to you, but I'm going to go ahead and delete this piece since we used it for its purpose, which is to find out how many stitching holes we need in the gusset. So let's go ahead and create it. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the pen tool. I'm going to place it on one of these grids. If you notice, there's a red line and green line saying I'm exactly on the grid. I want to hold shift down. I'm going to just make one click on the with the right mouse button, left mouse button, sorry. There's my dyslexia. And go ahead and pull the line out. Let's go like around here because we're just going to guesstimate. So let's go with there. I'm going to click again. There, now it has created a line. And that line is not the thickness we need it to be, which is because it's going to be a stitching line. So I'm going to come up here to the stroke section, double click in width, I'm going to type 1.4 mm for millimeters, which is equivalent to 0.055 inches, whichever one you want to do. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on it so we can see it better. There is going to be one of our stitching lines for the gusset. Now we got to convert it over to stitching holes. So I'm going to go back to the stroke, click dash line style. Everything else should still be the same. And there it is. Now for our sake, we're going to go ahead and turn this into individual objects. So we don't need to count it, and it'll be easier to get rid of them. So I'm going to go ahead and go to layer. I'm going to go to expand stroke. Now I'm going to go back to layer. I'm going to go to geometry and go to divide. Now they're all individual objects. See, I can grab one or many as I want. So for that reason, we can count them. Or I should say Affinity Design will count them. So there we go. We have them all. Oh, look how close I came. 56. Oh, if I would have just went one more, I wouldn't have to go through the routine that I'm about to go through. You know what? Let's find the lazy way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and click on the pen tool. I'm going to come to the exact grid node just above it. Press hold shift down, press once. Drag all the way down here. But let's go a little further. Let's go here. We're better off with more than less because you can always, it's easier to delete than to add. Because if you add, then you have to create measurements. If you delete, you don't have to create measurements because all the dots are already the same distance away from each other. So let's go back to the move tool. It's selected. Let's go to layer. Let's go to expand stroke. Then layer again. Let's go to geometry. Go to divide. Now they're all individual holes. Now you could already tell that there should be 58. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight them. And yes, there's 58. And as you know, we only need 57. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this final last hole. Now I hope you see how much easier it is to take away a hole than add a hole. Because if I had to add a hole, I'd have to figure out what the distance is and then play with rulers and stuff. So I don't have to do that. Plus, now I can get rid of this line with the 56 holes. There you go. Now this right here is your stitching line for the gusset, one of them at least. Now I also noticed that this hole over here is looking awfully wacky. And this had to do, why this actually happens, I don't know. But it does happen, so you got to pay attention. It's always the ones on the end. So this is now 2 pieces. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this dot. I'm also going to hit Alt and Shift because they're already in a row. So if I hit Shift, once again, it'll keep it straight. So I'm going to go ahead and place it right on top of that one. There you go. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and hit this toggle visibility in the layers section. It's showing these other holes, these other pieces of holes. I'm going to highlight them, hit delete. Now I'm going to find that other hole that I shut the visibility off. There it is. Now it's on. Let's check the other side to see if that hole also is wacky or not. Nope, it seems to be fine. Okay, there is your first line of stitching holes. So that gives us an idea of how far the gusset is going to be from side to side. This is the section where you got to make sure things are right, because picture a purse or a belt pouch like we're making. You want the gusset to extend to the same length as your pieces of leather, your body pieces. So, for example, if I had the gusset running parallel to this and it came too high, that would look bad. Too low, it would look bad. You want it to be the same distance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on the body piece right here. I'm going to change over to wireframe because I want things to be exact. And I'm going to go ahead and create a square box that will start on this very line right here. See how right now when I put my cursor on top of this line, it shows red. It's telling me I'm lined up with it. Now I want to bring that one down to this line. And maybe because it's a separate line that's not connected to anything, it's not really revealing that it's totally on there, and that's why I switched to wireframe. So let's go zoom in, because we're going to make sure that it's totally on there. And I'm going to head and drag this down. There. See, that time it gave me the red line, which shows me it's exactly on there, and that's what we want. And the reason I did this, because this is showing the exact amount of space that we want our gusset to, our last stitching hole to be away from the gusset. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this piece. We're going to end up deleting that one in the future. And I want to drag this one all the way to the top. Best way to do is just pull back. I'm going to bring this all the way up over here. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Now I'm going to hold shift down and rotate this thing because I want it to do it in increments. If I didn't have shift down, it wouldn't do it in increments. So there we go. Now I have it horizontal, and I want to line this up perfectly with this hole, just like we did with the other one. There we go. It flashed green. If you notice that, see how perfectly it's on there? That's how you want it to be. And let's go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to hit Alt, I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm going to drag this piece. It'll start moving on its own. Of course, you can back up and come in to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and just let the machine pull its way through. There we go, going faster. All right, stop. Now we want to do the same thing on this side. I'm holding shift to line it up. Get in there a little deeper. There we go, perfectly aligned. Now, once again, just to express, the reason we did that is because we're going to have to create a gusset box. And the gusset box is going to be 2 inches. Let's go ahead and create that now. And we know that it needs to be this far away from each stitching hole. So go ahead and I'm going to click on the rectangle box, go to a grid corner, pull down 2 inches, because that's the size we made this. There, it's down 2 inches. We can make it a little longer than we need to. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and bring this box down. So it lines up right there. See how it's the box is set up on that area? So it's flush against our guide box. Let's do the same thing over here. This time we're going to pull it over. There, boom. See how it turned green? It's showing now. Now this box is perfectly the distance away from the stitching holes. But it also, the problem is that we need it to be 4 millimeters from the side. And right now we have an indefinite amount. We're not sure what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the gusset box, and I'm going to hit Control J to create a new object, exact same size. And it's already also been selected. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the contour tool. And up here, I'm going to create the offset box by minus 4 mm for millimeters. Boom. Now we have that inner box. I'm going to switch to the move tool again. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both these boxes by clicking on one and then clicking on the other. Now they're both highlighted. Now I want these dots to land on this line perfectly. So I'm going to hold shift down because we already know that it's lined up vertically, and center it. Once again, these are the kind of things you want to double check because I want this to be exactly in the center of this dot. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down a guide. Let's get these boxes a little bit out of the way. We'll redo that one. And pull this guide to the center. See, now the guide's in the center. I also want to make sure it snaps to this box. So let's go ahead and bring a guide right there. See, now there's no guessing. We know that this is perfectly vertical and this is perfectly horizontal. And we want this box right here to land perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal in the center of these circles. Let's go back to our snapping section and shut off snap objects to bound. Now we just have snap to guides on. So that should snap directly to the guides. We should get some guidance. Let's zoom in. See, I'm not liking that. Make sure. Nope. All right, that looks pretty good. For some reason, it didn't want to. It snapped to this outer line, but then snapped to the center line for horizontal. But it seems to be on there perfectly centered. Hey, sometimes the software cooperates. Sometimes it's just a person not knowing how to use it. But let's double check over here, because if that side's lined up, this side should be lined up too. Yes, it looks like it. All right, so there we have one side of the stitching line set up, which will make the other side very easy to do. And the way to do that is go ahead and highlight just the stitching holes. So now the stitching holes are chosen. Maybe the outside guide boxes are too, but that's okay. Hold Alt down and Shift and drag straight down. And now our goal is to make sure that this is lined up with this side. Let's go ahead and make sure it is. Obviously it's not centered. So let's there's the line we want to center it with. All right, I'm going to pull it down more than it needs to be because we're going to go ahead and create a guide. This is where we want the guide to be. Go ahead and go to Snap 2. Snap to bounding box, and that'll make the guide. See there. Those wireframes are considered the bounding boxes. So now it's snapping to the bounding box. Now, since I unhighlighted this stitching line, you want to make sure all the holes are selected. Because I let go of them, we need to redo that. There we go, they're all selected. Now, once again, our goal is to align them with this line and this line. So I'm going to hold Shift down, click on the object. There, whoops, bam. That time both of the lines cooperated. It probably has to do with the series of different selections you can make with the snap tool. So learn how to use that. I need to obviously refresh myself a little bit more. So now the stitch lines are perfectly where they need to be in the gusset. Let's get rid of this guide. Let's get rid of the guides that are on the other side. There we go. Guide boxes. Now let's get rid of the actual guides that we created. Get rid of this one by dragging it off. Get rid of this one by dragging it off. Get rid of all the phantom ones that were created. There's our three main pieces. Let's go ahead and group this because you don't want anything sliding around. So that is grouped. Our gusset is complete. Let's see what's going on here. Oh yeah, there's that other box. Guide box that also was defaulting to the stitch line. Go ahead and switch that over just to show you. And let's delete that. All right, once again, here now is our three main pieces. We have the body piece with the stitching holes, we have the gusset with the stitching holes, and we have the front piece with the stitching holes. All the stitching holes line up because we didn't use in the stroke section the balance, and because of that, all those stitching holes are going to line up perfectly when we go ahead and cut them out. So as I said, these are your three main pieces. But there's no flair to it. But I'm going to go ahead and trick it out a little bit. And we're going to do that by, first, I'm going to go ahead and take this front piece, select it. I'm going to hit Alt and Shift and drag it to the side. I'm going to get rid of those stitching holes by ungrouping this. I'm going to zoom in so we're working just on this piece alone. So now it's ungrouped. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the stitching holes here and stitching holes here. And I'm going to go ahead and take this piece. I'm going to go ahead and drag it to the body. And if you feel more comfortable, which is always a good idea, so we have our three main pieces. Let's go ahead and take them. Put them to the side even here underneath. They're out of the way. They're totally out of the way. We can't ruin them. But I am going to take this piece and copy it. I'm going to hit Alt, Shift, and drag it up. Now let's go directly into that area. Take this other piece that we're working with now, bring it over here. Now I'm going to use this to create a patch area that's going to be sewn to the front. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it over because it's facing in the wrong direction. I'm going to line these up. I'm going to do that once again. You could follow the guidelines. Obviously, they're working. There, see, that's one way of lining them up. So now it's spot on. And I want to take that piece. I want to bring it in a little bit. Let's go ahead and hit the contour tool. All right, let's go in minus 10 millimeters to start off with. We're just going to experiment and see if our ideas work. So there we are. We're in 10 millimeters. Now let's leave a space for some sort of locking clasp. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the circle button. And I am going to create some sort of ellipsis. Let's go like 1.25. I'm going to specify. Yeah, I think I'm going to specify about 1.25 millimeters. Okay, so let's go ahead and center this. Whoops. Create another 0. I'm going to go ahead and click on the select tool. I want to center this, and I'm going to change this width to 1.25 inches. All right, what I want to do is create a hole in this front little patch right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the two pieces to select them. I'm going to click on the shape builder tool. I'm going to hit the minus button, which is already clicked on. And I'm going to get rid of this piece right here. And then I'm going to get rid of this piece right here, leaving us with this. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit the move tool and deselect, and that's the shape I'm looking for. All right, so now we have the shape that we're looking for, except it's in two pieces because of the way we created it. We have this piece here, Control Z, put that back, and this piece here, Control Z, put that back. So we want to join these pieces. So what I'm going to do is select both of them with the Shift key. Come here to the node tool, and if you see these nodes are now highlighted, I'm going to come in to this side and I'm going to highlight those, and I'm going to go ahead and hit up here in the action window, I'm going to hit join. So that side is joined, and now I'm going to come here on this side, highlight these with my mouse, left click and drag over them, and hit join as well. Now I'm going to back out, see what we got. I'm going to switch my tool over to the move tool and see what we have. Yes, now we have one complete piece. Now I want to create a stitching line. This is going to be the border of our patch that we're going to sew in there, but we need a stitching line, so I need to create a new object. Hit Control J and duplicate the object that is selected. Now it is selected, and I want to go to the contour tool, click on it, and then type in, let's go the same, -4 millimeters, enter. There we go, there's our stitching line. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make it into a stitching line by selecting it and go into stroke and click on the style, and you want it to be a dotted line. I want to change this to the size of the width that we want our stitching holes to be, which is 1.4 millimeter. And if you see they're shaped very weird at this point, you want to make sure caps is rounded, join is rounded, which is the first ones. And then you want to come down here to the first box and hit 0, and the space you want 4. Hit enter, and now there they are. Now I'm going to use balance in this one because I don't need to align this to any gusset or anything. So since it's going to make it symmetrical and balanced, here, watch, I'll shut it off. Bam. See, now this one's no longer in the corner. There's nothing in the corner here. There's nothing in the corner here. You know by now that stitching like this is not going to happen because it's going to look terrible. Stitch will be on an angle. It'll look terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and hit balanced. And if you notice now, all the stitching holes are where they need to be. And that's what I'll stitch around. Now, since this is 4 millimeters in, I'm going to create another line, but I'm going to click off of this and I'm going to once again click on the same line that we used to contour the stitching holes and create another layer, another object, Control J. And this time I'm going to go to the contour tool, and this time I'm going to go in -8 millimeters. There. So now there's a line directly within this one. So you have the actual stitching line, border, and this is where your pretty little design can go. So what I plan on doing with this, now that I'm looking at it, is I'm going to go ahead and create a box right here, which is going to be a cutout for this. And once this leans up against the inside of where the gusset area is, there's going to be a loop that'll come out through that little window, and then I'm going to use a deer antler to close the entire device, kind of as a locking mechanism. So let's go ahead and create the hole for that. And with that, I'm going to use let's see, one of this rounded rectangle tool. And I'm going to make it up. You see how it came up with dots? That's all right. Just every time it does that, it's just defaulting. So I'm going to go ahead and make it into a straight line. And I'm also going to change it to 0.29 millimeters, which is what I use for my skeletons, for my shapes. And I'm going to change the dimensions of this to 1 millimeter, 1 inch width, 0.5 inch height. There it is. That'll be the hole. Now let's go ahead and center this. There, it's centered. Whoops. See the yellow line? The green line, sorry. Let's put it like right. That looks good right there. So this is where the deer antler will go through. This will be a hole, and on the bottom piece of the purse, which is this will have a little loop on it, and it will go right through here. In fact, that's what we're going to work on next, is making sure the loops line up well. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make sure all the clasps are going to work with each other by lining everything up that's necessary. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to make a duplicate of this front piece just to keep that one safe. And then we'll decide which ones we want to use when we're done. And I'm going to hit Alt and Shift down and drag it upwards. Drag it a little upwards more. Zoom in. All right, now I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to flip it. And I am going to drag it on over and line them up with this piece. Make sure it's in there. See the red line and the green line? It's saying it's all lined up. Now I want to go ahead and be able to make a duplicate of this piece because I'm going to drag it away. That's where it's going to show me where the clasp is going to need to be. Control J, duplicate, and then grab onto this piece, hold Shift and pull away. There we go. Now this we're not going to cut out, but it's going to be a guide for how we're going to deal with this situation. And what I mean by that is that this is going to have a loop of leather that's going to come up and fit through this hole right here. And then the deer antler is going to stick through it. So let's go ahead and concentrate on this area right now by taking a hole. I'm going to make a hole. One, hold Shift down to make it perfectly round. I want this hole to be 330 seconds. And if Google gave me the correct answer, then the equivalent would be 0.9375 in decimals. Enter. Okay, there's the hole. This hole is going to be for a rivet, which is going to connect the little piece of leather that's going to loop for the antler. So I'm going to create two of these holes by holding Alt and Shift down. I'm going to drag this one also to parallel to that one. There you go. Those guidelines are great. And there, they're both evenly on the hole right now. And I want to take this one, move it over. I'm hitting the arrow key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks good. Same with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. They're an even distance apart. Let's look at that right there. Okay, so now we have these rivets that are going to hold that piece in. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to also shut off wireframe. So now let me go ahead and group this. Now it's grouped and safe. This now, when we line up, you'll see that when we close the lid, the piece of leather will stick through, and you see the rivets are in the right place. So that is completed. Let's go ahead and take this piece, scroll back. I'm going to go ahead and I'll come in just to make it easier to look. I'm going to go ahead and flip this piece again. There. So now it's perfect. It's actually better than the one we had. So we can go ahead and delete that one because that one's more complete. This one also is more complete than this one, but let's go ahead and do certain things that we need to do. Like for example, we don't want to leave this here because once again, if we go ahead to laser engrave it, it's just going to cut all this out because it doesn't know what it is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make sure it's all grouped. Okay, I'm going to group it, and then I'm going to hold Alt and Shift down and pull it off. There we go. Now with this one, we don't need that thing there, so I'm going to ungroup it and get rid of that. Now I'm going to group it again to keep it all together. Grouped. Now that's our patch. And now here, we got to get rid of these lines because all we want is the stitching holes. So let's see if it doesn't, ungroup it. Grab this inner pattern, take it off, grab this outer one, get rid of it. There we go. So now we have it just with our stitching holes. So we could place this once we engrave it the way we want. We can put it on there and it'll be a patch that'll fit perfectly. Now, if you want to be safe, you could take all this skeletal structure and move it over here, knowing that just in case for any reason you have to backtrack or you found that you need it. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the gusset. There you go. Down here is the stuff that I've decided I'm going to use. So here's the, I'm going to make a copy of this piece. There we go. Now the patch, I'm going to bring down here. No harm in making a copy of that. It's always good to have redundancies. Now this piece right here, I'm going to group and I'm going to drag down here with the Alt. Actually, I didn't mean to do the Alt, but now I got it. And we can go ahead and delete that one. So we have over here, in case we need to backtrack, it's more of a skeletal structure, probably won't have to. And then over here, these are all the pieces that we plan on using. But there's one more piece that we need to create. Okay, now we're going to make the final piece, which is the belt loop. This is the piece that's going to attach to the body of the belt pouch and loop around your belt. And as I showed you in the beginning of the video, all the different pieces. So this is the piece that we're going to build now. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the rectangle tool. And I'm going to make this, well, just drag it out for right now, because I could always change the settings in the settings boxes. And I'm going to make it 2 inches wide over down here in the settings box. Enter. And I'm going to make it 9.5 inches long. There you go. So here's the piece. Let's zoom up on it just to be so everyone can see it. All right, now we're going to need a stitching line of some sort. So let's go ahead and bring this in. How do we want to go about doing this? Let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and duplicate this piece, Control J, and then contour it. And we're going to bring this in. Let's go. You know, we're not going to contour it. We're just going to change its size. We're going to change its size to 1.75 width and 1.80 height. And see what, okay, there we go. We got a small box now. Now I want to center this. Oh, there we go. Those guides are excellent. But let's see, how deep do I want to bring it in? Let's just stay consistent and go ahead and bring it in 4 millimeters. So I'm going to duplicate this piece, and I'm going to, which is the large piece, and I'm going to go ahead and contour to a -4 millimeters. Hit enter. Now let's go ahead and align those pieces. Let's go ahead and center it. I want to use this one as the main centering. And go ahead and hit center. There, it already was. Now I can go ahead and get rid of this piece, which is the inside offset that we just used to just make sure everything was lined up. So this is going to be our stitch line. So let's go ahead and change that to up in the stroke section. Let's go ahead and change that to 1.4 millimeters. That's how thick that's because I didn't put millimeters, so it automatically thought I meant inches. So let's go again, 1.4 mm, enter. And let's go ahead and change that in the stroke section to dotted dashed lines. And everything else is all set up. And there it is. If you notice that everything is in the corner, if I shut off the balance, it goes wacky. You see that? The balance is a great item for when you're doing things that are going to maintain in 2 dimensions. So there is that. Now we're going to need another stitch line right up here, because this is going to have to connect to that area right there in order to close it. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this piece, Control J, and I'm going to hit Shift and drag it up. All right, so we're going to make the stitch line come out about, actually, 1/4 inch, 0.25. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to change things to wireframes again, because I like lining things up like that. And I'm just going to create any size at this point, because I'm going to fill it in the little box down here. So the height, I'm going to do 0.25. I'm going to go ahead and bring that here. This is my little box. So I'm going to bring that, hold Shift down to keep it straight. Damn, it slammed right into it and snapped. Now I'm going to take off wireframe and just see, yep, center of the box. But we don't need that full square. We just need that one line. So to do that, first of all, I'm going to get rid of the box so we know where everything is. Everything is where it needs to be at this point. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer of the dots, go to layer, go to expand stroke, and then layer again, and go to geometry and hit divide. Now these are all individual holes. Now I'm going to get rid of all these other holes, and I'm going to now group these holes. Grouped. So let's group them all together now. The whole thing. Group. Okay, now this piece right here is going to fold underneath around the belt and sew to this right here. Do you get it? Now what we need to do is make sure that the back piece has that these stitching holes, so this will attach. So I'm going to take this piece. We'll bring it up to around, first let's center it. They're both highlighted. I'm going to click on the main piece and hit the hold Alt down and click on it. There we go. Now I'm going to center them. Now we have to decide how far down we want to bring this piece, because the lower it is, the depending on the length of the strap that we created, which was 9.5, it'll be less amount to go through the loop. Plus, if you have it too low, then the top part of the belt loop is the top part of the belt pouch is going to want to lean forward, and that's going to be kind of strange. So let's go ahead and go in, and it's already centered, so let's bring it, holding down, hitting Shift. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just bring it slightly above the 5th hole. There we go. All right, so that's where those holes are going to be. Now, of course, we don't want this there. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this piece. We're going to have to clean it up. I'll show you what I mean. But we're going to duplicate, Control J, hit the mouse button, left mouse button, hit Shift and pull this away. And you see the stitching holes are there, but there's also more stuff there than we want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup that piece. Go ahead and go up here. Get rid of this row of stitching holes. Don't want it there. Get rid of this box. Don't want it there. So there you go. This is what we're looking for. You have your main body piece. You have your stitching holes going around the out for the gusset. You have the stitching holes for the pattern of the pouch. You have the box here that's open for the latch. And you have this box down here in order to put the belt loop patch on there. All right, so here's all the pieces that it takes to make the belt pouch, just minus the small piece that acts as a loop for this area right here, which will hold the deer antler. Now, after completing my pattern, I said to myself, let's explore it and see if there's anything that you would like to change. Because you want to be able to have a complete pattern that you can use over and over again, and you want to be happy with it. So I found an issue with it that I didn't like, which made me have to address it, and I'll show it to you. It could be something as simple as this for me. Now, if you notice the stitching line here that goes all the way around for the patch, right here, this little area, when the thread comes around this, it's just too much of a right angle for me. I know, maybe look, I just wanted to change that. I wasn't happy with that. So realizing what caused that, since this is just an outline of the actual piece, I realized that I should have made my angles for the actual pentagram to be a lot more fatter, because that would have allowed this piece to be a lot more rounder. See, like this curve right here is much more sharp. So what I did was I went ahead and just duplicated everything I just did, except I made them more round. So I created a new pattern. So let me show it to you. Here it is. Here's the new one. Now, if you notice, the angle here is a lot rounder, and because of that, this is a lot smoother. So I went ahead and changed that. You can see it in the patch too. So this video is mostly about how to create your own patterns. I'm just giving you instructions on how I went about making this one, which should enlighten you to be able to create any shape you want to make and create a pattern with a gusset and have the stitching holes line up. That was the main goal of this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to continue with the pattern that we made, which obviously is very similar except for those differences, and I'm going to go ahead and use the one that I like. Once again, this video wasn't about you duplicating what I did. It was just about learning how to do this when you want to make something. You don't need to make a pentagram shaped one. You can make a round one or a horseshoe one. This is just showing you how to do it so you can explore from this point on. Okay, our pattern is done. So what do we do next? Next, we want to bring it into LightBurn. So right now I have LightBurn open, and I also have Affinity Design 2 open. This is Affinity Design. Now, how do you bring it into LightBurn? It's really very simple. First, what I did was I went ahead and grouped all my pieces. If I didn't group all my pieces, I could actually copy and paste individual pieces into LightBurn, but I want to bring the whole pattern into LightBurn. So I went ahead and grouped it. Now I'm going to hit Control C for copy, or of course, you could always go to Edit and then hit Copy. Most likely you've been using computers for a little while, so you know Control C will do it. Now I'm going to hit Alt Tab to go to LightBurn. Now we're in LightBurn. And it literally is just a matter of hitting Control V. Bam. Now I'm going to go ahead and center my pattern. And there we are. My pattern is now with all stitching holes and everything into LightBurn. Now we want to set it up to be able to cut properly. Now these are all cuts. We're just cutting it out, we're cutting out the holes and we're cutting out the stitching pattern. And we're going to do something different with the patch itself. So right now, I'm literally going to hit the ungroup button until you can't ungroup anything anymore. There, now everything's ungrouped. But I am going to take our patch and I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go ahead and group that and I'm going to take it off the field. We're not going to play with that right now. The rest of them, when it comes to cutting, I use two colors. I use red and blue. I'll make the stitching holes blue and I'll make the cut lines red. Why? Because you can make things go in a cut in a particular order. I want to cut the stitching holes before I cut the pattern out, because if I cut the pattern out, it'll be separate from the rest of the leather and it could shift or drop. So you want to make sure that you cut the stitching holes first. So right now I'm going to highlight just the actual frames, including this little box. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that one as well. So right now, all the frames should be clicked on and selected. I'm going to go down to red. Bam. Now you see all the frames have turned red. I also noticed I have this box here on the front of the purse that goes right behind this area. That was just for a guide. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete that. That just made it so I knew where to put these stitching holes. Rivet holes, I'm sorry. All right, so now to be able to make all the stitching holes blue, I'm going to go to the layers panel and make the red lines invisible. I like to keep things pretty uniform, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the gusset area, highlight them, make them blue, and then group them. Same with the section for the belt loop.
Highlight all the holes, make them blue, and group them. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the front. Make the holes blue, group them, as well as this piece. Blue, group them, and as well as the front piece. Make sure I didn't grab any of the other ones by moving it. Nope. Make it blue.
Okay, so now everything that needs to be blue is blue. And let's ignite the red once again so we can see it. Excellent. Now if you see in the cut layers section, the blue is underneath the red. You do not want it that way because it's going to cut the red first. It's going to cut in this order. So I'm going to take the blue layer and pull it up above the red layer. And there we go. This is actually ready to cut. Okay, now when it comes to the patch, we want to do a little things differently. At least I'm going to share the idea that came to me. Now I went ahead already, I made the outer layer into a cut layer. That'll cut out the pattern. I turned the stitching holes blue. Now if you noticed, I have this inside border. Now what I want to do is make this part of the design. So I'm not going to cut it out like that. I'm going to actually take this shape, this Celtic shape that I turned upside down because I'm going to have it rotate around this path right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it smaller. That's by hitting Control and using the mouse. Let's see. We'll get in there and we'll know exactly how small we want to make it. Let's zoom in. Make it a little smaller. Whoops. Here we go. There we go. That's a nice and small. Now I also want to center it on that line. So I'm going to go ahead and click on both of them. So now if you see, they're both selected. And I am going to hit the center button in order to center it there. See, it just moved. Now it's dead center. Now what I want to do is I want to copy it to path. Now normally what you'd have to do is click on this path or object, and then you'd right click and you can go to convert to path. but it's grayed out. Why? Because it's already considered a path. So if you ever try to do this and it's already grayed out, just try to go ahead and do what you're trying to do, which is copy a long path. The words were eluding me, so I just went and looked. Copy a long path. So I want to take this object and copy it along this path. Let's go ahead in there a little bit. So once again, I'm going to click on the object first, then the path second. Then I'm going to go to Arrange, and I'm going to go to Copy Along Path. Now I want to turn Rotate Copies on, because if I didn't, then it's just going to keep going around the circle without contouring itself towards the direction of the circle. And then I'm just going to start hitting this numbers copy until I like where it is. There we go. You see the pattern is now starting to circle the path. You can do it as much as you want, although you want to keep it even looking. Let's go with that. Looks good. These are the areas you want to look for to see if they look weird or not. And that I could live with. Let's back it up and see what it looks like. Actually, that looks better to me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And there we go as far as the path is concerned. Okay, I found the pattern that I wanted to use. I thought this Celtic dragon looked really nice. And instead of using it as an image, I'm going to go ahead and use the trace feature, which I will hit Alt-T and bring that on up. And usually the default is fine. So let's just take a look at it. Yep, that looks good to me. Hit OK. There's the design. I'm going to delete the original. I'm also going to change the design to the color I like to use for engraving, which is this turquoise. I'm going to place it in the front, and I'm also going to shrink it down. I'm holding down the Control key. It will shrink it from the center proportionally on all sides. So let's see. Is that too big? Yeah, let's go a little smaller. There we go. That's nice. Now let's make sure it's in the center by making sure it's highlighted, and so is one of these other areas. There we go. And now hit the center button. There. Now it's right in the center. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what that would look like. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. That's what we're going to end up with. All right. Let me take a look at some of the settings. The turquoise, I'm going to use a 10-watt diode laser for my engraving. I think that when it comes to engraving, the smaller the dot size, the better. I think 10-watt lasers are excellent for engraving. And in this case, I'm going to use my AlgoLaser DIY 10-watt kit laser. So I'm going to go ahead and set that I'm going to do it at 5,000 millimeters a minute. And I'm going to also do it at 50% power. So right now, I'm going to also set the cutting, since I'm using a less powered laser. The holes I'm going to set to 300% and 90% power. And the same with the line to cut out the actual piece. 390% power. And let's go ahead and look to see how long that should take us. 19 minutes and 30 seconds. And of course, if you notice right here, I have the engraving underneath the cutting. You do not want to do that. Now I'm going to take the engraving and I'm going to go ahead and put it at the very, very front as well. So now it's going to engrave first, then it's going to put the holes in, and then it's going to cut it out. All right, let's see if we can shrink the amount of time this is going to take by, instead of making all these little designs, I'm going to move this. Let me see if this is, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup this. Okay, now those are all individual pieces. I'm going to hide for just a moment the red and the blue. Because I want to change the colors of these pieces right here. And I'm going to change them to, let's go with orange. And let's set it up how we want, which is going to be the same thing. 5,000 to 50 power. I want to do a fill. Thank you. I was confused there. And now I want to see if I can fill shapes individually, how that works out. Because now it might actually take less time. Let me turn everything else on. Let's see how long it'll take now. 15 minutes and 13 seconds. So I cut down on the time a considerable amount. And how I did that was I took now the layer of the path of objects, and I made it so it'll engrave them individually, one at a time. So instead of the laser going back and forth, it's just going to do each one at a time. So you're saving space with the laser, which means you're saving time. So let's see what this is going to look like again. All right, very cool. We're ready to engrave. Sorry that took longer than I expected, but you know we're just making this on the fly. So, sorry. And now I'm going to cut out a piece of leather, and we are going to use my Wi-Fi laser engraver. This one is going to be the AlgoLaser Delta. It's a 22-watt laser. It's one that I consistently use for when I'm cutting out pieces. I love the leather. I love this laser. It just works so well, and it's Wi-Fi, so I end up using it quite a bit. This is the AlgoLaser Delta. It's a 22-watt laser, and it's a laser I gravitate to mostly when I want to cut something out. It also engraves excellently, but for me, detail is everything, and I know a 10-watt laser is going to have a smaller spot size, and for that reason, when it comes to engraving, I always like to use my 10-watt laser. A 10-watt laser is also able to cut very well. This is the AlgoLaser DIY kit. It is their 10-watt laser. It's very budget friendly, but it works fantastically. Here's an example of the quality engraving this machine is capable of doing. All right, so now I have all the pieces ready to make the belt pouch. I have the gusset. This is made out of crazy horse leather. It's a nice soft leather. It's an oil tan leather. This is the patch. Here's the front piece with the holes for the fixture. The rivets will go in there. This is the part that goes around the belt. This is the whole body. This part will come wrapping around. All right, I actually videotaped myself creating, doing all the leather dye work and the sewing and all that. But man, this video is so long, and you guys have no desire to see that most likely. How many videos have you watched people stitching? But I wanted to show you the final product once again, plus to give you an idea. All these items, I made the patterns on the computer with Affinity Design as well as LightBurn, and I also use the Algo lasers, which I've been using a lot lately. This I made the other day. It's one of those steampunk potion bottle holders. And here, like for example, here's the piece that goes right here, if you notice. So there's just so many... Once you open the door to understand how to make patterns, you're going to have so much more fun doing it. Of course, once I made this pattern, I couldn't help myself. I made a bunch of them. I liked them. The holiday seasons are coming up. So, look, if you made it this far into the video, I totally appreciate it. These tutorial videos, they're obviously not a bunch of adorable kittens, so it's not like they get 1 million views. But I am aware of how much help these videos can be to people that want to make patterns for themselves. Once you know how to do it, you could do it forever. And it's really excellent. So if you don't mind subscribing to this this channel, if you'd like, liking the video would be great. The more you like the video, obviously the algorithm gets out there and there's a more opportunity for a lot more people to get to see these videos. So as I always say, look, you know, we have the opportunity to make this planet great by being kind to each other. Really simple, and everyone likes being treated well. So peace and take care, and thank you very much.